So, into the third segment of the draft and talking more a little bit here on some of the teams that I haven't really brought up as of yet. The Las Vegas Raiders were one of those teams in the quarterback conversations. At pick 13, it was always going to be tough for them to go up and try and trade up for a Jaden Daniels, who seemed to be the favorite because of his connection with Antonio Pierce and recruiting him to Arizona State. There was a relationship there already, but again, like most people would have said, I was of the mindset that I wouldn't gamble away the future by trading them a boatload of first round picks, maybe some of your players that you have, just to move up for a quarterback that wouldn't have the best supporting cast around them. So the Las Vegas Raiders decided to stay put at 13, and just seeing how the board fell with Michael Penix going earlier and that chain reaction that I talked about earlier in the show kind of breaking down as it did, they decided not to trade up, stay put at 13, and they ended up having Brock Bowers just sitting there for the taking. And I saw a lot of people not really be pleased with this pick, be confused by it, because they could have easily gone corner. Quinyon Mitchell was sitting right there. He was highly touted as the best corner, one of the best defensive players overall in this draft, and it seemed like that could have been a very good pick. That was the quote-unquote ideal pick for the value and everything like that, but they took Brock Bowers. They went with the best player available, and all these trade rumors and stuff like that were sort of put to rest as their pick got closer and closer. One thing that came out was that from ESPN's Jeremy Fowler that reported on this whole situation about a trade coming from a Las Vegas Raiders source that said everything else was smoke and mirrors. We weren't going to reach or overpay for a quarterback. It was never a worry and nothing frantic. So just stating back to the fact that the Raiders around those trade talks almost using it as a decoy just to sort of ruffle some feathers up there in the draft. Hopefully for them, ideally it would have worked out. Maybe they say they're going to trade up and it just affected how all these other teams went about their business. But it just seemed like this source says from the Las Vegas Raiders that it was all just smoke and mirrors. They weren't really thinking about doing it, but it does play in contrast to what Tom Telesco said, their general manager for the Las Vegas Raiders, mentioning that they did explore a trade prior to the draft. He claimed that he didn't pursue a trade up particularly very hard in that first round. They were exploring it, like the report said, but it never really developed into anything serious. And he went on in his press conference for day 2 of the NFL draft, and he went on to say, on the quarterback selections potentially in the later rounds, he said, on the third day, no, really not the second day either. First day, yes, but not after that. If we felt there was a quarterback out there that was better than what we had or could potentially be better, certainly we would have done something about it, but it didn't line up. Raiders will now essentially just go with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell as their quarterbacks heading into the season. That's the expected outcome unless they, sign somebody in free agency or try to trade for somebody else. That seems to be their 2 starters. I'm probably leaning towards Gardner Minshew being their starter, but with all the trade talks and everything, I think it just left everybody very underwhelmed that the Raiders didn't do anything, just sort of saw all the top quarterbacks be picked off one by one, and people were just left very surprised with their very tame attitude towards it. But in contrast to that, I think they did the right thing, not overdoing it, potentially for someone that could work out. I didn't really like that mindset, and they went with a safer option, Brock Bowers, like I mentioned, which is the main topic about this whole idea. Now you shift your attention to Brock Bowers and you get over not drafting a quarterback, and you still have one of the most talented players on offense just in general in this draft. I thought he was for sure going top 10. I was a little surprised when the Jets, I know they traded back to 11, but I was still pretty surprised when they took an offensive tackle. I know that was another favorite position for the Jets to draft, protection for the future, more protection for Aaron Rodgers to get him maybe to play longer if he doesn't get hit as much. But I just thought going all in, bringing Rodgers as many weapons as he needed, I thought that was for sure going to be the move, but Brock Bowers continued to slide. The Broncos weren't going to take Brock Bowers at 12. They ended up taking Bo Nix, and before anybody else can try and trade up, the Colts were very interested in Brock Bowers. I'm sure if he went to 14 or even stuck at 13, I'm sure the Colts might have called the Las Vegas Raiders about making a trade. I'm sure of that just from the reports on the Colts being very interested in him. But the Las Vegas Raiders decided to ended up taking him at 13. And you look at Brock Bowers now, it really just shifts this idea. For me, in terms of the Raiders, I look at them, you look at the quarterback, that is really the main point of this entire thing. I just finished talking about the Browns and Deshaun Watson. If you don't have a quarterback or don't have somebody there playing to the level that they should, it's not really going to pan out for them at this point. And their general manager, Tom Telesco, mentioned that they had scouts tracking Brock Bowers for an extensive period of time. So by shifting your attention now to Brock Bowers, it's not like this was just a random selection of thinking, oh, Brock Bowers is there, let's just take him. They obviously did a lot of work on Brock Bowers. They had their scouts tracking him for a long time, as well as other prospects, like they do their due diligence throughout this whole draft process just to map out every likely outcome that they have. And this was rare. I can see it just because the Raiders last year drafted Michael Mayer, 35th overall last year. So it does make it a little bit unconventional, very rare for the Raiders to draft back-to-back tight ends so high. They actually became the first team in 50 years to draft tight ends that high since the Buffalo Bills did it in 1973. So this sort of thing, this sort of love for tight ends doesn't really happen as much. But as Tom Telesco, the Raiders general manager, implied during his press conference, that he tried to stick to the best player available approach. On top of that, Brock Bowers just adds another dimension to this offense. You want to talk about playmaking and just making a difference. Brock Bowers can surely make that happen for the Las Vegas Raiders. And there's always this topic or just conversation going around quarterbacks and how a quarterback can be great, but if you don't have the weapons around him, it could turn out very poorly, especially talking about a rookie or just any quarterback really in general. If you don't support him, the quarterback position, for how important it is, it's very reliant on the offensive line, the receivers, the running back, every other position. The quarterback is very reliant on all of that, and you could draft a very talented quarterback, and it would be hard for him to make the receivers look better than they are, because it works the other way around. You bring in Brock Bowers with Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. You have all of these talents around a Gardner Minshew or a Aiden O'Connell. With this level of talent, if Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell can just not really mess up, honestly, and just be a game manager, like that phrase is thrown around a lot, they're going to look a lot better than they're advertised as if they have all these great options. Brock Bowers over the middle, Michael Mayer, Devontae Adams, and Jacoby Myers as well. They could look potentially a lot better than the kind of player that they are. You don't think of Aiden O'Connell as a top quarterback. Same goes with Gardner Minshew. He's been around a whole lot. You don't see these guys as solidified number one options at quarterback, but when you have all these all-stars around you, these great talents around you, it makes you look a lot better if all you have to do is just put it on target, not do too much, stick to the game plan, and get them the ball. It makes the Raiders look a lot better, makes the quarterback look a lot better, and in that mindset, in that strategy, I really like this move. You can't go wrong with adding a guy like Brock Bowers, and it still remains a long-term problem for the Raiders. You can't stick with them 5-6 years going on. But for right now, I think it was the best move for them. To have Brock Bowers just fall in their lap like this, it still is a great pick in my estimation. And they have to figure out other spots as well. I would like them to add another defensive back to their team. But other than that, they addressed the running back room pretty well, offensive line and defensive line by signing Christian Wilkins, Alexander Madison, and so forth. This just makes this whole offseason process a lot more solid than it did looking back a few months ago when everybody was looking at the Raiders like they need a quarterback, they need this, they need that. Bringing in talented players, even if you didn't get a quarterback, I still think it makes you be able to improve this next year. No one expects this Raiders team to be game changing, a whole different team, a 180-degree turn in 2024. But if you just get better with Antonio Pierce there, the players seem to like him. I think this could end up being a great solution for them long term. And then just accepting not getting a top guy as a quarterback says a lot about really their maturity, willing to accept, what can we do? We missed out on a top quarterback. To have that confidence in their work, in Antonio Pierce, and in their project that they have building, I think says a lot about them, gives me more confidence if I'm a Raiders fan, if I'm really banking on this team. To have that level of confidence and maturity above all, to just accept it, that this is a marathon, not a sprint. I can fully 100% support that, and the Raiders are another team I'm looking forward to seeing how Brock Bowers fits into that offense. Devontae Adams now as well, trying to rebound from last year, building that team up from scratch with Antonio Pierce leading the way. I'm a big fan of Antonio Pierce and what they're doing in Las Vegas. Next year, the year after that, we can address the quarterback if it pans out that way, but a good overall selection for the Las Vegas Raiders. I think they made a good choice there, and looking forward to seeing them in 2024. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to the next segment. The last segment on today's show revolves around the Pittsburgh Steelers and their general manager, Omar Khan, finally addressing the rumors around the draft. There was a lot being said about the 49ers receivers especially. Find out and stick around to see what Omar Khan said on those topics on the last segment on today's show. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to the GSMC Chip Shot Football Podcast.